each of you introduce yourselves. We'll start with Gina. Or, yeah.
I'm Gina Bryant-Nugen. I'm co-producer at AFP Film Co.
And Milan.
Milan Chakraborty. I'm a juror for the Tallgrass Film Festival, producer and head of film at Marginal Media Works.
Okay, so what I want to do here is, I watched your panel. I think we both saw the panel for the producers, and a lot of big ideas. And so what I wanted to be able to do is break that down a little bit more, kind of let you have your long-winded answers that you can kind of go into. Yeah, it gives us a little bit more. And because with Gina being fairly new, you having a lot of experience, I think we all can benefit from being able to ask a little bit more direct questions to some of those ideas. So first, what I would like for you to do is explain what a producer is.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to try to think of a short answer from that. A producer is a lot of things. And I do believe it takes a village. So a lot of people get caught up on the term. And but in general, I look at the producer almost like a general contractor. You're hiring your subcontractors, and at the end of the day, you're responsible for finishing on time and on budget. And I should add, in light of some of the tragic events over this last weekend, also in charge of safety and a good work environment as well.
What I would say, a lot of newer filmmakers kind of hand themselves or assign themselves titles. What would be one of the misconceptions you think a lot of newer filmmakers who may call themselves the producers think it is that it really is?
That's a really good question. Like, because I know even on my first film, 4 films where I was producer, line producer, production accountant, I wanted to tell everyone I did all these things just to prove that I worked so much. But the big question, when you say you're a producer, is that something you want to be hired by someone else to do? And it's just like, if you're a director, say you're a director, like, and it's like, surround yourself with a team of people that are good. I respect each and every craft as their own thing. So saying that they do so much, it's like, it's fine if that's indie film. We have to do a lot of things, but needing to take credit for it. And there's another area of producing that kind of revealed itself to me, as I was doing my first few films, that people originally don't think about is how film festivals and distribution. So, I've been involved in some films. I never stepped foot on set, but still helped them through the finish line. So none of it's rocket science. A lot, it's experience. So it's like surrounding yourself who's kind of people that have been through the whole process, because it's kind of like a rocket. If a rocket is slightly off its coordinates from the beginning, by the time it's at its destination, it's way over here. Whereas if you kind of stay close to the line, and it's that old term, fix it in post. It's really fix it in prep, fix it in development. Like it's really hard to fix stuff after you're done.
What was that first project that you had that you felt like, okay, I'm nailing it. This is something I think I got a grip on what I'm doing?
Oh man. So I'll tell you, the first time I thought I knew what I was doing and I was proven wrong. So my 4th film was The Lifeguard with Kristen Bell, directed by Liz Garcia. It premiered at Sundance 2013. So that's literally the top of the mountain, right? It's like, I did it. And then you get a rough lesson in distribution. And that's why I added that in my previous answer, is I didn't understand how that worked. And so the next film I did was a film called Where Hope Grows, starring young man with Down syndrome. And working with the writer director for years. We did our first movie together, and we made it and premiered Dallas Film Festival, won the audience award at Heartland. Roadside picked us up, and we did 300 theaters and 1.2 million in the box office, and had over 500,000 Facebook fans. And it's like, we created this, we did this together, and a film that the industry said wouldn't worked. And then the big moment kind of was my 10th film. I was executive producer on Assassination Nation, which sold for over 10 million at Sundance. And it was like, all right, I think I understand what's going on and how to do this. But look, in producing, it's a lot of imposter syndrome, and there's a lot of uncertainty. You have one good year, the next, it's like, what have you done for me lately? So it's a tough answer, because it's like, I'm still constantly learning. I think you think about when I started 13 years ago and got my first Netflix subscription, it's constantly evolving. And if you're not keeping up with those changes and understanding, your first audience is the buyer, right? Before anyone eventually gets it. And so studying how they're doing it. And I always say, it's like, if you follow today's trend, you're 2 or 3 years late. You got to kind of forecast where you think we'll be in a year or two. And then if your film meets that demand there, you're good.
But how do you figure that out? Because, you're trying to see the future. Like, how do you know that I am my gut is getting me to that, where things are going and not staying where it's at?
If I was sitting here saying, I know, what is that famous quote? Nobody knows anything. It's like, it's like, like, diversity is not a fad. We're only trending that way, right? And I think you how is just how you have conversations, and how reading the trades every day is seeing which, and then and seeing where things are expanding. And also, we're becoming a more global culture, and all the streamers, they want things to work not only in America but Brazil. And look at Squid Game, no English, and the biggest show of all time. I mean, and so is there one thing? No. And sometimes it's socio-political. Like right now, they'll tell you overall people aren't watching heavy dramas because it's such a serious time right now. So they need a release. So that release is horror, that release is comedy, romantic comedy, that release is faith and family. So that's a general rule that I'm dealing with. But it's like, would I tell someone no one should make any dramas? It's like, no, but statistically your odds are slightly less. So that's a lot of what I try to do is because I'm a former CPA and auditor, that one of the central things is risk mitigation. So it's like, I may not be right, but here's my logic behind it, right?
Mm-hmm. And Gina, you can feel free to jump in whenever you like. Real quick.
Man, I'm always pulling it out. I mean, I guess the biggest thing that I want to say is I appreciate you being here and giving us your time. I've learned a lot from what you've had to say, and then also you've validated some of the things that I've been thinking. And I guess, like you said, that's part of validating. Like, what do I know? What is next? Do I know the trend? How much of it is your own personal taste and proclivities?
That's a great question, and I want to first kind of piggyback off what you're saying. So it's like, if you try to do a formula, so if you try to get into horror, but you don't authentically love horror, you're just trying to dabble because you think it'll never work. Like, I make sure any filmmakers that are doing horror, they know because the horror community is a great, loving community. They'll watch anything. It's one of the few that they'll watch things without stars. It's the genre.
I'm a horror fan.
The genre leads the way. So authenticity to the story you're telling is very important. And if you're not the person, like, make sure other people on the team are. And that leads me to your question, how much my personal taste, if people look at my IMDb and they can't figure me out. I have a Christian movie starring a person with Down syndrome, horror movie, romantic comedy, thriller, a biopic about Jeffrey Dahmer, my friend Dahmer. There's a reason, because I think a lot of producers and now executives, it's like they do think of their own personal taste. I think of the audience's taste. So it doesn't have to be for me, but if I think it serves its audience properly, like one of my early questions is who's this for? And if you nail it for them, because it's like that, unfortunately, I think the history film is about personal preference, and it's like, that's why they missed the mark, because half the executives are 70-year-old like us. And I remember Alan Horn, who's about to retire from Disney. He was talking to us like years ago when I worked with Warner Brothers, because he ran Warner Brothers before that. So literally, yeah, he ran Warner Brothers. Now he runs Disney. Like, really? There's no one, and he's actually pretty bad, but he totally missed and didn't get 300, and then 300 exploded, so my personal take is like, there's certain things, like I don't like to see like kids hurt or certain things like that are kind of my own third rails, but that part's personal taste. But my biggest thing when I was doing pure independent for the last 13 years was, does it serve its audience, and is it a story that moves me in whatever way it's trying to move me. Now with my job at Marginal Media Works, we have a very specific mandate, underrepresented stories and underrepresented filmmakers, but we're not trying to do, and we love these movies, but the trauma movies are the movies of exceptionalism. We think there should be more movies about Black joy. We think romantic comedies with South Asians, romantic comedies, LGBTQ. So that's the margins we're playing with. So now that we have a mandate, now that's coming a little bit more into play for me. But when I was doing pure independent, it wasn't just my taste. It's the audience. It's trying to find taste, and I did that on purpose. So people didn't think I made a certain type of film. But for filmmakers, for directors and writers, I do think being real, like developing your brand, becomes important, especially early on.
I had asked during the panel about finding an audience, finding your audience, and a part of that for me was mostly about we can easily go find horror. You like horror, go find a horror audience, but horror has a spectrum. And a lot of times, if I talk to another filmmaker, like, who is this for? Well, they want everybody, because they see box office numbers and go, I think I can reach out to everyone. But how do you, I think you mentioned Tyler Perry, and Tyler Perry, as much as I'm not the biggest fan of his films, he is an inspiration for me because he went out and created this audience through the plays. And then the plays turned into the movies. And now, as people bought into his fan base is loyal to a Tyler Perry film. But if someone else made the Tyler Perry film, they wouldn't go watch it. How would a new filmmaker do something like that in a way that would get, in your opinion, to get fans, but also get the attention of a producer who wants to fund that out to be bigger?
Yeah. And, Tyler Perry, what a brilliant guy. But at the same time, do you almost wonder, like, what if the studio system accepted him at the beginning? Does he not become Tyler Perry? All this stuff, a lot of it, he created it out of the traditional system not accepting him, and him saying, I know there's a huge underserved audience. And what we're realizing right now, whether it's Squid Game or Moonlight or Parasite, like, wait, all these movies are doing, historically, everything they've told us about who the audience is, where the money is actually been false. So it's just, and so Another thing you said is, I think, a common mistake of early filmmakers. And I talked a little bit about this on the panel the other day, is trying to make everyone happy. Here's the thing: when I don't really look at box office as an important, I look at that. That's almost a different industry, because the box office is often supported by 20 to 100 to 150 million dollars of marketing dollars. We don't have that. I'll look at 10 through 20 on the weekend box office, because you'll find the independent distributors, what's working, what's finding audiences without the money. So that's one of the most common mistakes. If you try to impress everyone, you're probably not going to impress anyone. Where you look at movies like Moonlight and Parasite, they're so specific in their niche or niche. I never know how to say it.
It's close both ways.
They're so specific, but if you're great at what you do and execute, to perfection, or as close to perfection as it gets, then it crosses over. They know very specifically what they're doing, because, like, I'll read some things, perfectly good drama, perfectly good romantic comedy, but if you don't have the biggest stars in those movies, it'll be very hard to break out. And so, we obviously lead with the story, but that's why horror is cool, because that's not as cast dependent. So trying to impress everyone is a common pitfall for early filmmakers, because that's kind of what they teach at film schools, right? The only way they can charge you is, this is where I get in trouble. This is why I've never said yes to a podcast, because if they have to sell you the dream that you'll be Spielberg or Scorsese
in film school. That's why I never went.
Because I'm a CPA, I'm an accounting major from the College of William & Mary, and I've produced and executive produced 20 films, and there's a lot of great things about film school, mostly the community, but they sell the dream, and the dream is the 4-quadrant: men, women, young, old. But the reality of indie film is of something a lot more specific, and you need to address that right in your script phase, because that should affect your writing.
I think that you've kind of brought up some interesting points for me about, so obviously you have to balance between, I want to listen and take feedback from people, and obviously at the end of the day, you have to believe in what you're doing, and, you have to trust your own gut. How do you find that place of, I guess it comes from, the other day I heard on a panel somebody saying, you have to take criticism from the right people. And I just think that, sorry, I'm trying to formulate this thought. It is Sunday morning.
Yeah.
How do you find that place where maybe that is who you should listen to? Like, I don't know, like, especially with somebody that's marginalized, like being a woman, obviously a white woman, but I know sexism's real. I know racism's real. I know all these things are real, but I feel like sometimes people get caught up in, well, they just don't understand me. And while that's true, I mean, what's the balance of that?
It's a hard thing, because you do want to listen to advice. Not enough people do listen to the advice, but at the same time, I never want to stop the dream. I never want to. So kind of what your goal is, what your budget is. If you're spending a lot of people's money, then you need to listen to more people. If you're spending your own, or you're making a short, and then go forth and create and see what the marketplace says, like the film festivals. I know film, like, writer Twitter, like, they're very divided on labs and Blacklist. I'm a huge fan of the Blacklist, and I optioned 2 projects that Frank Leonard and team, like, they sent out a weekly email to, like, producers, like, these were my favorite scripts of the week.
Explain the Blacklist.
The Blacklist, the brilliant Franklin Leonard, he was a reader, I think, for Overbrook or Westbrook. They've changed the name, but Will Smith's company back in the day. And every weekend he was reading 8 to 10 projects. And he was like, this is kind of dumb, right? Like, it's just, and then you're passing on everything on Monday. So he anonymously sent like 100 executives and said, what's your favorite screenplay that you read that hasn't been made? And he got all these answers. He's a former, I think, McKinsey consultant. So like me, he's a spreadsheet guy too. And he anonymously put out this list. And guess what? People started optioning those projects. Those projects started getting made. On the Reed Hastings LinkedIn guy's podcast, Franklin said, and I think it's absolutely brilliant, and I regurgitate it. He was like, too many people are finding or trying. This I'm misquoting it, but they're the needle in the haystack. But you need to become a metal detector. So in a crowded marketplace, if you're reading a lot, the most you could probably read is like 500 scripts. But in a given year, there's like 50,000 scripts. so it's like these contests, like Austin Film Festival is great for writers, and it's just helping us. We can't read everything, so all right, this got some validation in another place, and you can go, oh, this was and Blacklist has evolved. Like that's the basis of Blacklist is their yearly list, but now they have a service you can get coverage on your script. It's like these are Hollywood readers, and I always say at least get 3, right? So if you can start seeing a trend in the criticisms, then maybe there's something there, right? Or unfortunately, the biggest thing that happens is people surround themselves by yes men who tell them how brilliant they are. Then they come to one person. It's like, yeah, but my family all said this is great. It's like classic mistake. And it is hard. And this is why I only produce, and I'm not trying to, nor could I be a writer or a director, because it's like someone saying, we don't like what your baby looks like, and it's a very personal. So I admire your art. Eventually you should probably go forward, especially if the stakes are low. See what happens. So like that's movie magic. Sometimes it comes out way better than you could ever plan for, but getting that feedback outside of your circles, outside it helps you develop your own craft, and nobody knows anything in the end, but a few, it's like, okay, like I can show you what were my theories are now my track record. It's like, here's what I did for this film, here's what I did for that film, and there's a lot. There's IMDb Pro, you go there, you can see who's making the films you like, and we're reaching out and building your community. Twitter is free. You can be a part of a great community by being a part of the conversation, regardless of where you are. That's why I believe regional film festivals are so important. And you don't have, I moved from LA to Chattanooga last year, because it's like, you don't have to be in the big cities, and we need stories from all over. All over. So that's why I love people that come out to their local town to support and meet and involve and engage, because in the end, most people work not with necessarily the best artists. It's the artists they know.
Yeah. So where is the place? Well, there's something you mentioned also about proof of concepts. And it's something like last year, it works. 2 things you talked about is kind of filling those voids and making proof of concepts. Because last year I made a pandemic movie. I shot it in March. It came out in April. So where we was at in the pandemic was so early that it was one of the first ones that was out there making a pandemic one-man show movie. And then it went really, really well. It went so well, I didn't know what I need to do next. So I reached out to a friend of mine who she's a producer, but she's an actress, and she's all in Hollywood doing a bunch of things. I'm like, what do I do next? Because I'm like, do I need an agent? Like, where do I need to be? And she asked me, what do you want to do? So I want to be a director. That's what I ultimately want to be, is to direct. Don't really want to act, but directing. And she says, well, you need to just start making proof of concept, like something that you can show a world that you can build a world, and that is just finished enough to feel finished, but not done enough to be something that can eventually be made and, put some money behind. So what I'm asking is, where is that real place for short filmmaking? Today, should a person be making a short and trying to get it on the Tubies and Amazon, or should they make that short and try to work towards getting it out as something that can be produced out to be a feature film?
It's a tough. The answer is yes. I'm bullish on shorts. I've never made one personally, but I'm bullish on them why haven't I made one? Because being a former CPA, people look for me. It's like, how do we make money? Right.
Right.
But a short, that's not the objective, right? It's a different objective. It's showing that you're a master at your craft, hopefully for less money. And it's getting that on-set experience. And then you go to film festivals. And at a film festival, no one says, oh, short filmmakers go over there, full-length filmmakers go over there. You're a filmmaker with a film in the fest, and you're part of the community. So it's like, create, learn from your mistakes, but the stakes are low. So if you have to work a job and then take a month off or this, and like do it, because the stakes are low. The biggest goal is always to make the next one, right? Mm. And if you come out the gates, spend $2 million somehow you got, and you lose it all, it's going to be really hard to justify ever supporting you. So taking your time and working on your craft, and others seeing you, becoming a part of the community, others seeing that you're doing this, because, you know, the two things I don't want to diminish the role of the director. Obviously it's a director's medium, but there's two things, and it's not necessarily the most natural. Obviously it's clarity of vision. Do they know what they want, and can they communicate to all the people? Because everybody, you know, I think on some panel I heard a director is somebody that has to have 1,000 right answers a day. You know, like it's like, is this red or is this shirt red or green? The answer can never be either one works, because when I hear a director, well, this character's in this mood, so right now it should be a lot of reds, and then in this part of the movie it should be green. Like I'm like, they're so brilliant, like, because everything has where the water is placed, everything has meaning. So clarity of vision and being able to communicate that. And the other part's working with actors. That's understanding the nuances. I use the word ego, but I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. But different personalities and working with those. So that only comes from repetition and on-set experience beyond just what's in your head. And actors, whether they, you know, it's going to be their face that's out there. So anytime that I have a project and then I reach out to an actor or an actor's representation, the first question they ask is, who's the director? And if they like the script, I want to meet with the director. And the more experience you have that you've developed through the short films, and be ready to meet the moment, right? And they're going to say, I want to see what else they've done or this. And it's like, with a short, you can compact and make it as good as possible. But when you make the short long and you don't have the resources, guess what? You actually don't have a strong reel. So that's what you're trying to do. You're building. It'll seem slow, but then you'll look back and watch your own personal and career growth.
Can you pull the curtain back just a little bit and kind of share what your process is in terms of how would a person who you never heard of before have a project that's either out in the world or at a festival that would get your attention, and then that process you would go through to try to help get it over to the finish line, or whatever that finish line would be?
This is where, you know, like last year, 2 projects, you know, I was just reading log lines that Blacklist set out. I read it every time. And I reached out, read the script. Then the next part, I have to like the person. So that's why that it's getting to know the person, because these processes take a long time. Will they take a note? Can they take a note? How do they respond to it? If they don't agree with me, how do they deal with that? And because it's like, I don't have every right answer, but I enjoy the dialogue. I found a project on Twitter last year. I was like, that's a great title. Got to know her. We haven't really announced it yet, so I don't think I'm allowed to say it. But got to know her. She'd been trying to raise money for 8.5 years, and got her full worked on some of her materials, got her full financing. We've never met in person. Like still, like it's only been Zoom, and she's already shooting. I mean, COVID had a lot to do with that. So the rules are changing. Like it used to be, I met them at a film festival. I met them, somebody vouched for them. They said, you really need to meet this. It just makes it easier. There's no shortage of ideas, but there is the kind of two most finite things are kind of time and money. So where every time I'm spending time here, I can't spend time there. So have to protect that. So cutting through the noise and people that are just, I feel like, good players in the industry, like they care about the industry, they're supporting others. That to me, it's the person first. I may miss out on working with some of the most brilliant people because if they're unhinged and not going to treat people right with this, because I had another career till I was 29, I don't have time for that. Like I'm all I want to do is keep making films and helping other people tell their stories. That's the role of the producer. It's not my story,
So do you like spam? Like when people just
no.
Okay. What's the wrong way?
That's a great question. So many people, and this is my style. There are people out there that throw everything up against the wall and hope something sticks. If they send out 1,000 emails and one person responds, they look at it as a success, and they're not wrong. But for me, I first engage in a listening game. So the spam email told me they haven't listened. It's like, engage in a conversation, finding out what people are about, who they are, what they're like, and then it's time to pick. It's this. I don't give it as advice. It's how I live. There's people I've known for 5 years that I've never pitched anything because I've been listening to what they are looking for, and I don't have that, or I don't do that. And there's some people, it's like you'll tell them what you're looking for, and they just go into their same pitch that they've said 100 times in a room. So taking the time to develop the relationship is so critical because, like I said a little bit earlier, it's not the best. People work with the people they know, and I want to like the people I know. So I get it. It seems like it's easy to do, but or even if they do that, it's just like if they approach. Always say it's like you got to be seen as a person that's trying to put more into the system than you're trying to take out. It's got to be a positive contribution, and a lot of people are takers. And if I personally get the sense if a person is a taker, it's like I don't care how brilliant that log line is. It's like nope. And it's also It's also very tricky, and you can expose yourself to potential litigation. If someone sends something like John Zalzerny, who runs Bellevue Production, was a producer, still is a producer, but now as a management company, mostly writers. Great follow on Twitter, but talks about it all. It's legally, he won't open that script because now if you sent him like a buddy NASCAR comedy, and then like 10 years later he makes a buddy NASCAR comedy, they'll sue because of that. So
that's what I was told about the proof of concepts. That kind of is like a gray area of not having it, kind of having some degree of ownership of that project because it was fleshed a little bit.
Yeah, but pretty sure you'll have a script, and you're pretty sure you can copyright a short with the U.S. Copyright Office. And so now you have the intellectual property. So that's still yours. Now, look, there's tons of stuff in the zeitgeist. What's truly original anymore? You see it all the time. Just when you think you have it, but yeah, I think building relationships and building your peer group in this industry is the key, because the longer you spend, it's like all of a sudden, like the people I started with, they're decision makers now. And if you were a good player along the way and not a taker, that's the karma, the good karma that you get coming back. But karma isn't a 1-to-1 equation. If I do something good for you, you don't owe me. It's just keep doing good for just doing. That's the right thing to do. Eventually, the world. I mean, I know that's more a philosophical thing, but that's why on Instagram I'm Hollywood Hindu.
I mean, the wheels are just spinning in my head. So something you kind of touched on is the value of being authentic and the value of making authentic connections. And I find for myself, but also being good to work with, being, having a good, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but being good to work with. I have a super hard time with being inauthentic with people, and that gets me into trouble. So, I mean, what balance is there? Like, is there some value in I'm going to play to you, like, suck up to people, I guess.
Oh, I mean, look, yeah, whatever it takes, but eventually you get to know, I feel uncomfortable when people tell me like all the great things. It's just like that's where I think, like, whatever level. I mean, I still think I'm a low level, like just getting started, but like people think it's like that executive is going to reach down and pull them to the top. And the key is putting the time, putting in the work over time. And so it's like when you have that power dynamic, yeah, naturally you're going to change, manage upwards, but you can still be yourself. Complementary, sucking up for the sake of sucking up doesn't help if you don't mean it. If you truly mean it and truly respect that person, you can say that's sucking up, or you could just say like, that's a good thing, because so much of filmmaking is a very lonely journey. So when you get that external validation that something you said or something you made, or meant something to someone, it feels good. Like, cause I talked about in every panel, like the amount of imposter syndrome we all have along the way. Like, it's like, I still don't know the exact answer. Even the studio, I always root for every film to win, but like that movie that just came out, like last Duel, some of the biggest stars and this, and only did like 4 or 5 million in box office. So it's like, they have all the money in the world, all the resources in the world, and they can't even figure it out. So let's not put that much pressure on ourselves. It's like, keep doing the right thing, whether it's the kinds of movies you're making or the relationships you build, and it'll pay off over time. Now, the second up, like that kind of stuff, it's like, that'll only go so far. So I don't think it's being inauthentic by doing that. That's playing the game.
I've been sitting on like this the game.
Yeah.
You know me, but I've sucked up too.
Well, I guess I mean, like, when I say that, to me that is being inauthentic. Like, there's a difference between genuinely like complimenting someone and gaining brownie points, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. And like, yeah. So that's my thought.
I have 2 last things. One of them being about, and maybe they can both kind of melt together, but you talked about that 10-year process, roughly 8 to 10-year process. I want you to talk about that, and also talk about the place that some of those free streaming devices can play and help with a new filmmaker trying to just grow that audience.
Yeah. So this was advice I got right before I started, right before I was switching careers. My old college roommate, who ended up our music supervisor on My Friend Dahmer. So now we're, back then he was an assistant, but now he just did the music supervision for the new Bill and Ted's. But right before I started, he said, give yourself 7 to 10 years to feel like you're heading in the right direction. And I was 29 years old, leaving a good career. And I was like, 7 to 10 years, I want to be 40 at the end. And that's not 7 to 10 years to succeed, to feel like you're heading in the right direction. But knowing that up front is why I say it on any panel or every opportunity, because that I knew from the beginning it was going to be a long game, but I had a little bit of ego, right? Because I thought I was pretty smart. I'd already had a pretty decent career, so I was like, I'm gonna beat it. And then 4 years in, my fourth film gets into Sundance. I knew I wouldn't take 7 to 10 years, and then I got those rough lessons in distribution, and then kept building, and then my 10th year, my 10th film, Assassination Nation, sold for 10 million, and it's like, okay, like now I'm getting there. Now year 13, I get head of film for a production company for a former CPA. Like that didn't go to film school. That's not the typical route. But I knew from the beginning, even though, I mean, there were times, and this, I mean, I've house sat, I've slept on couches. I'm not sure where I was going to be the next month. It's like I said, it's a very lonely adventure. So, but if you know it's going to take a while, and it's like, it's those baby steps. What are you doing every day? What are you doing every week? But then you look back, it's like, all right, we're building. Maybe the world just hasn't caught up yet. It's just like, it's that slow build. And there's a famous like quote about the industry, like, if you can imagine yourself doing something else, do that. And it, cause it's like, it's going to be hard. It's not a true meritocracy, but if you love it, you should try it. The second part of your question is about, are you talking about like AVOD and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Getting into that because, for me, and a lot of my shorts are like, they're like short features, because I really would make a feature if I could, but I'm trying to make sure it's tight enough. Yeah. Where's the best places to try to put some of that stuff and use these platforms to build audience, because it is free, and I know the metric that they get is important, but that's not easy to get back either.
This is the tough thing. I'm a big believer in the new markets, AVOD and all that, especially when you're in the right budget level. But guess what? The AVOD, their first question is going to be, who's in it? They're still playing a money game. They don't just accept anything. So building your audience, you can build your audience through the film festival circuit. You can, because you're building your audience within the industry. You got to, that's your, that's one of your first audiences. I say it's the obligatory in any indie film. You have to talk about Jim Cummings and Thunder Road and Ross Putman and First Girl I Ever Loved, and it's just like, these producers, actors, writers, they saw what the system was giving them, and they built their audience much like Tyler Perry did. And then when they took their shot, their audience came with them, and they started small, and then their audience became bigger, and that took years. Like Thunder Road was after they'd done the short of Thunder Road, and they'd done 6 years of shorts and building up their audience and traveling to film festivals with it. People wanted to see them win, and they did. And now they're helping other filmmakers. They're paying back to the system that helped them. So while it's great, it's yes, there's more places to put stuff than ever, but it's harder than ever to get in. So. But that's okay. You can build it off YouTube and TikTok and that kind of stuff as you're getting better at your craft. And then when you're ready with and going to, being SAG-AFTRA and getting the faces they know, and just respecting their time. It's like, hey, they might not do your project if you need them for 4 weeks, but if you only need them for 3 days or 5 days, and your project has that much more value to the buyer because they're thinking someone might click on it. I know it's just like, it sounds disgusting when you make it transactional like that.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's our goal, right? Eventually we're not making it for just ourselves. We want to share our voice with others. So it's this weird intersection of art and commerce, and that's where I need people like you. I need people like you, and I think others need people like me too to help them find that intersection.
Well, that's all I have. Unless Gina, are you good?
I mean, yeah. Am I
Look that
ever?
up.
I mean, am I ever? I always want to talk more about it.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah, I would talk more about it too, because you bring up a lot of interesting things that could be broken down even more. But I will let you go. Thank you again. If you want to share your social media stuff, if that's something you like to share or anything you want to promote, go ahead, and thank you again for coming out to Tallgrass.
Thank you first for having this forum and asking me. Hopefully, didn't bore too many people.
Well, this is about us.
By socials on Twitter, I'm Taj Milan, and on Instagram, I'm Hollywood Hindu, and we have Distancing Socially's out. There's a bunch of my, if you follow my IMDb, bunch of stuff on Hulu right now. But I'm very excited about The Killing of Kenneth Chamberlin coming out on November 19th on HBO MAX, executive produced by Morgan Freeman and his team at Revelations, and written and directed by David Medell, and working really close with Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. Movie, Frankie Faison does an incredible job. He was just nominated for a Gotham Award, but the real purpose of the movie is to give some accountability and justice for Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. And it's coming out on the exact 10-year anniversary of when he was shot and killed by the White Plains police officers. So they just reopened the case earlier last year, post George Floyd, even though it happened and nobody's done anything. So it's one of those. It feels like more than this, just a movie. It's a son looking for a son and a whole family looking for justice, and that justice hopefully is something people around the world can have earned and deserve.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one too. I saw Morgan Freeman promoting it. I was like, what is this?
Well, you can get it on iTunes and Amazon right now.
Okay.
but you can get it on HBO in November.
I mean, November is next week.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you again. I'm glad you came out. The panel was amazing. I had a good time doing this. I'm going to watch this 1,000 times to pick up what I missed. So thank you, Gina, for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Lester.
And I usually say next time, but this is the first time. I don't know if we do this again.
Yeah.
So
I'll be back.
All right.
If you have me.
All right.
Thanks so much.